I'm Corbett Wall with DV Auction, here with your feeder flash for Wednesday, September the 29th, brought to you in part by Endovac Beef with Immune Plus, Pasteurella and Anemia vaccine for respiratory protection. It protects against E. coli and Salmonella also, and it activates the immune system for a stronger response. Get Endovac Beef with Immune Plus. Receipts are kind of rearranged here as we're getting into the fall. Now you think, well, how is that? And I'm talking about feeder cattle receipts in your auction sales, which is the biggest thing I talk about. You guys might not think that, but that's what I'm really all about, is promoting auction markets and telling you about the markets in them. But your high volume barns that tend to sell the biggest runs of yearlings, they're kind of backed off right now, and not seeing their bigger runs, or even an average run for the most part for them. And we're starting to see a lot of the receipts shift to our local and regional type markets. And the reason that is because your backgrounders don't have much to sell right now. It's your cow-calf producers that have that. Your cow-calf producers tend to stay local. They have their roots are deep, and they have a relationship with a local auction market or local commission man there, and they'll stay there closer to home. Where a big backgrounder, when he puts together loads of yearlings, he'll send those cattle or put a lot of wheels under them to get to an auction market that he feels like has the best yearling market or has the best ties with your feedlots in there. But as far as calves, calves are in differing amounts. You don't see square loads of calves because that's just not the way that they're born, and you really need sale barns, and you need to have a better relationship with your sale barn man when you're selling calves, because calves have to be sexed and sized and sorted for quality if you have a kind of up and down herd there. And so you see that stay closer to home, and your calf buyers, they have to go out and seek those calves wherever they are. So these order buyers are having to put some miles on and go out and look for the calves that they want to buy. And we're seeing bigger runs in some of your smaller sale barns, and this is the time whenever they make hay, is in the fall of the year, when unfortunately the majority of people have spring-born calves to sell. But and I say unfortunately because I wish more people would fall calve, and then we can have another big run in the spring of the year, and it would balance out our supplies, and everybody would have a better market to sell under, and it wouldn't stress our infrastructure. And I'm not talking about Biden's infrastructure with environment and things like that. I'm talking about the real infrastructure, the tools that we need, the roads, the markets, of our cattle industry. The way we're set up right now, it stresses it too much, because we don't have enough cattle infrastructure as far as marketing of sale barns. We don't have enough pen space. We don't have enough shackles or hooks in your packing plants, and we definitely don't have enough trucks to haul all these calves off at the same time. But they're all coming, and it's going to fill little sale barns up all over the country, and that's one reason that most of the time, and there's always a week or two, especially in October, where you see the supplies of calves outweigh demand, because there's just not enough buyers to get around to all of them. Everybody's selling at the same time. There's not enough holes to stick them in, and again, there's not enough trucks to haul them off. And you think, well, why not leave them at the sale barn for a few days? Well, calves, and even if they're weaned calves, but especially if they're short weaned or unweaned, you take them to the sale barn, you leave them lay around there 2 or 3 days, and it is just that much harder to get those calves straightened up. And you can just tell if calves come into a sale barn, they run through there, get them sold, and you get them right out of there. It's not too bad of a deal. But you leave them kind of linger around the sale barn for 2 or 3 days, because cattle are a lot like people. They'll kind of get pumped up for something and get excited about something, and it'll kind of stave off their diseases that try to come in on them, especially if they're in a place where they're susceptible to a lot of new diseases and things. They'll have some resistance to that for a while. You leave them lay around there too long, and they just kind of let their guard down, and that's whenever they get sick, is because they let their guard down, and then you put them under more stress. Then you just have a much harder time getting those calves straightened up. But we're pretty much out of yearlings. There's some places like in the foothills of the Rockies, mountain regions there, where we have some yearlings that are shipping right now, but a lot of those aren't for sale. You don't see a lot of yearlings. Where you do see true yearling cattle show up in an auction market or even in direct trade, they will draw a lot of interest, but there's just not that many of them anymore. Your calves are coming to town, and then you get up into the Corn Belt, and folks are busy with harvest. So even though you might have some farmer feeders or some farmer backgrounders that would be interested in a winter project of some calves, not right now, because they're busy. When it's time to farm, farmers love to farm. There's nothing they would rather do. They only get to do it for a few weeks in the spring and a few weeks in the fall, and so they're going to do it. The rest of the stuff, spraying and different things like that, they'll hire a lot of that stuff done. But farmers love to farm, and they're going to do it, and you cannot sell them cattle whenever it's time for them to farm. I kind of had a jolt on Tuesday. Found out a good friend of mine had passed, and probably a good friend to many of you people out there. And I'm saying this pretty soon. He passed away on Tuesday morning, and probably a lot of you that were close to him may not have even heard yet. And I hate for you to hear it here, but a lot of you that are old friends and hadn't thought of him for a while might want to say that. And I'd say locally, as far as family and close friends, they would all know. But Charlie Sellers passed on Tuesday morning, and lived here in Amarillo. He'd been in the Amarillo and Canyon area for the past 40 years at least or so. He started out down in Hamlin, Texas, down close to where I was at on Monday. Spent a lot of time around Sweetwater. His father, Cecil Sellers, there, and Charlie always called his cattle company Cecil Sellers Cattle Company as a tribute to his father. Him and his brother Pinky, both worked for Cecil Sellers Cattle Company there. But Charlie bought cattle the majority of his life. He's one of those guys that bought more cattle than most people have ever seen, at the same stage of life. But I literally have known and looked up to Charlie Sellers for as long as I can remember. For as long as I can remember, he's been around. He's always had good orders and always bought a lot of cattle. Always a gentleman, fairly distinguished too, for being such a good guy in the sale barns there. He was a hell of an auctioneer, and a lot of people didn't know that. He didn't do it a whole lot. He did sell quite a bit of real estate, towards the end of his life. But I'd seen him sell, some Calcuttas and different things like that. Really good auctioneer, and just really a good guy. He was the father of the late Chaz Sellers. That was a big cattle buyer and operator here several years ago. Had another very successful son down in the Lubbock area, John Sellers. But Charlie, I tell you what, he was a good guy. He was one of those guys that was the same every time you saw him. If he was your friend and he knew you, he would treat you the same whether you saw him at a big event or behind the sale barn looking at some cattle somewhere or wherever you saw him. He was president of Texas Cattle Feeders Association several years ago, before things got quite so political. He wasn't a political type guy. He was a cattle buyer and bought droves of them. And we're going to miss him. And I can't really fathom your cattle industry in the Texas Panhandle, Oklahoma Panhandle, and the like without Charlie Sellers in it. But I guess we'll have to get used to that. But going to miss him, and sure hate that. and my thoughts are with his family and friends that are struggling with that. But also on Tuesday, they had a Western Region Qualifier for the LMA World Livestock Auctioneer Championship. See some similar names that always seem to rise to the top here, and I can call all the top 3 finishers. The top 10 are going to make it to the qualify for the World Livestock Auctioneer Championship that's going to be in Shipshewana, Indiana, this next summer. But you see similar talents rise to the top, and the top 3 I can call all friends of mine, good friends, and I'm sure glad to see them get in there and be at the top. The champion of the Western Region Qualifier was my good friend Eric Dries from up in Idaho. He lives in Caldwell, I think. He manages to sell there in Emmett, Idaho. The reserve champion was Steve Godert, and he's from Montana, sells markets out there. Really good guy there too. And the first runner-up was Sisto Paez from New Mexico. There, lives in Portales. And I got cornered with Sisto up at the King of the Ring competition that I judged up there in Dodge City, and he's a good guy too. And I congratulate all those guys for being in the top 3. There was some other good friends of mine that were in the top 10, and some that didn't make it there. But it was a good contest from what I seen. It was held in Salina, Utah, which that's not a market many of us know about, but they did a good job hosting that market, and they've got 2 more qualifiers coming up later this fall and into the winter to get ready for the big contest that'll happen next June. Let's talk about your board for Tuesday. October live cattle futures were down 40 cents at 122 even. December down 30 cents at 127.50. Going out from there, and they were a little uneven, from down 7 cents to up 60, but your board wasn't too awful bad. It regained a lot of what it lost on the feeder cattle. Not all, but probably about half in some cases there. But September feeder cattle, it's struggling to line up here with your cash index, which it's coming maturity right now, was up 15 cents at 154.40. October was up $1.35, so that gained, like I said, about not quite half of what it lost to open the week, but 156.12. All your back months were higher, and in a big way, from 80 cents to $1.47 higher. Fat cattle trade, we saw a little bit of trade. We haven't established a market yet, but most of your areas have seen a little bit of trade, and it's hanging in there kind of close to where last week's trade was. Of course, it's early, but it's on the lower end of that price spread. But you can't rule out getting more money for cattle this week. I don't know why we wouldn't. Our show lists are a lot smaller than what they were, and so people are pulling. It's not because they're out of cattle, but they're pulling them off the show list. But Iowa had about 400 head confirmed sales on Tuesday. Live sales from 122 to 123. Dress sales at 193. Nebraska, about 1,000 head confirmed on Tuesday. All the live sales were at 122, and dress sales at 196. Kansas, about 600 head confirmed for Tuesday. Start off the week, 122 was the price, and your range last week was right either side of 123 there, but 122 wouldn't be considered terrible. Now Texas, the only negotiated cash sales they had confirmed on Tuesday was the Consolidated Beef Producers Texas Cash Pool, where they do a sealed bid deal on there, and Consolidated Beef Producers puts the cattle together. You guys can participate in that. You don't have to be a CBP member. They'd get along a lot better if they could get a few more cattle in there. They'd have just short of 300 head, but on the sealed bid, the winner bid 124. Just a little bit of competition helps, and that's just a little bit. But we didn't see a little bit of competition in Kansas, and it was at 122. You had another bid that they published there on the CBP Texas Cash Pool. It was 122.80, so quite a ways back from there. But I'm glad to see just trying to get a little bit of price discovery there. Your best fat cattle auction to start the week out on Tuesday was Stockman's Livestock in Yankton, South Dakota. I tell you about them pretty regular. They're conventional fat cattle, just straight up fat cattle, and they'd be top quality, guys. Sell them from 117 to 119.50. That's off the direct trade right now. Normally it's running a little bit ahead of that, but off a little bit. The market was kind of unevenly steady. They did have loads and bigger bunches of drug-free or non-implant fat cattle, and they'd be higher grading cattle. They sell from 119 to 124.50. So yes, they are bringing a premium, and it's nice to have competition in an auction ring, even on fat cattle. And I wish we had a lot more fat cattle auctions out there. But your box beef cutout values continue to drift lower. So your packers, they've been selling a lot more product on the spot market, for the first 2 or 3 weeks out. And that's where we get the box beef cutout quotes that we see there. And, normally they put those sales out far into the future, and I say far, at least 3 weeks or a month or 2 or 3 months out. And we don't really get to see that demand. We don't get to see that trade. But we've been selling a lot more of it on the spot market, if you will. But their demand for export is very, very good. And right here for the next month or so is the time of the year where historically we see the most and the most brisk trade for export beef sales. And so I think your packers are going to kind of want some cattle. And they've just kind of shown some signs here that they're always managing the supply, but they're keeping it pretty close to the vest. But they may be needing some cattle, and our market-ready supplies are kind of dwindling here as we go forth and we go into the fourth quarter. They're supposed to be pretty tight. Maybe a time for you guys to gain a little ground on your fat cattle market, but you got to try. If you're going to do it, you got to ask more for them to start the week out, and you got to hold to your guns a little bit to try to get more. Choice cuts on Tuesday afternoon, 301.56 down $1.14. Selects down just 3 cents at 274.35. Let's talk about your feeder cattle markets. Your real-time index on DV auction late in the day on Tuesday at 152.24. That was down 13 cents. So it's hanging in there pretty close to steady. Like I said, not many yearlings, not many big cattle, overshadowed by far with your new crop calves coming in. Some of your big sales on Tuesday: Ozarks Regional Stockyards, West Plains, Missouri, 3,300 head, and they didn't have many load lots. There was a lot of small deals in there, and there's a lot of producers in that part of the country. I love that part of the country for that very reason, but they kind of have a volatile market, but there'll be plenty of buyers in there. In West Plains at the sale, 3,300 head of small bunches, mostly calves. That's a pretty good sized run. Then they had another nearly 700 head in the in-house video through DV auction. And if you guys think that you got bigger strings of cattle you can't get into your barn, but you'd still like to market those cattle for those guys, and you'd like to do it in a competitive way, get a hold of us at DV auction, and we can hook you up. And an in-house video is not that hard of a thing to do. Another thing I want to mention about DV auction is for our commercial sale barn guys, we have the auto bid option now. So in the past with DV, you've had to recognize the bid, which does make the bidder at home or in his office feel comfortable knowing that his bid's been recognized and that he's in. But if you can get your auctioneers to communicate with those online buyers and kind of tell them where they're at, a lot of times it's easier to just do the auto bid where they click and it flashes. The auctioneer or a bid taker can take that bid and then go right on to the floor bids or maybe other online bids there. But we do have the auto bid option open for every DV auction customer out there. Right in the middle where it has enable bidding or disable bidding, you'll see the button that says enable auto bid. And you guys, if you got any questions about it, call our tech support office there. And if you guys have been holding off to get DV auction put in your barn, it's not as expensive as you think it might be. It will help your market, and we'll give you a lot more marketing options. Get a hold of us here, DV Auction. We can get you installed and get you guys rolling even before your big fall run starts if you need to. But Ozarks Regional Stockyard sold calves under 700 pounds, $2 to $4 lower. Feeder cattle, calves, and a few yearlings they had weighing over 7 were steady to $3 higher. Philip the Giant, Philip, South Dakota, 2,800 head, which is not a big run for them, but they're starting to get bigger. Compared to 2 weeks ago, their calf market was as much as $12 higher. There's just more people milling around and buying cattle up in that part of the country, and they're just like everybody else in South Dakota. They're selling a lot of their October calves early at a lighter weight. It's been dry up there. Look at this automated market report through Cattle Market Central with DV Auction. Your best tested weights: 600 head of 4-weight steer calves, average 451 at 193.91. 681 head of the 5-weight steer calves, average 522 at 184.52. The best tested weight of heifers was 523 head of 4-weight heifers, average 460 with a weighted average price of 170.69. Some other quotes from around the circuit: Atkinson Livestock Market, right on the Yellow Brick Road in Atkinson, Nebraska. The old reliable there sold 50 head, 856-pound steers at $163.50. Wow. Kimball Livestock Exchange in Kimball, South Dakota, they sell big strings up there. 233 head of 965-pound steers, Kimball, South Dakota, bring 151.25. Best market I saw in the Southern Plains, of course, on Tuesday was Beaver County Stockyards in Beaver, Oklahoma. They were taking some online bids on there, and they've coached them a little bit. They're going to be using that auto bid option from now on, and are glad to do that. But 60 head of steers in Beaver weighed 828 pounds at $156.75. That's a good quote. But the best quote perhaps that I saw anywhere on Tuesday, your Zach Tran top quote for the day, come out of Kingsville Livestock Auction in Kingsville, Missouri. The Drexel Ranch steers, 68 head, weighed 671 at $175. And that's your feeder flash for Wednesday.